Welcome back to Missed Apex Formula E podcast. We are charged up and ready to go. Welcome back, everybody. It is a non-race weekend, so we are finding a way to fill the time before we head over to Monaco. I'm your host, Christina Lee Mace, and this week, as per usual, we have Chris Stevens, partner in crime. How are we doing, Chris?
Hey, Christina. Yeah, people have actual questions about Formula E for us. I can't believe it.
It is wild. We are bringing over something from the Formula One side of Missed Apex, and it is our first mailbag episode. Although I was very disappointed that these questions were not delivered in a bag of mail. They were, in fact, done through email, Slack, X, which I hate calling it, formerly known as Twitter. And most disappointingly, no carrier pigeons have come into my home, which, given the character of Squeaks McGee, is probably a good thing.
We need like a Harry Potter owl to come and drop in the mail for us.
Yes, but with our luck, all of our birds would fly straight into the windows and then plummet downwards. And also, sitting in, we have Spanners. Because he has a microphone, because he has free time, he has decided to join us and sometimes share his opinions.
Yes, and all I have is opinions, sadly. I know, Christina, you're a content creator around Formula E and motorsport. Chris has been a journalist in the heart of Formula E, and I reckon stuff. So I'm going to tell you what I reckon. I'm going to patiently wait for your expert answers and then give you my hot takes. Also, I have wine.
Spanners, you're like a dad that just can't well, you are a dad, but you also just can't relinquish control.
I've relinquished control. I don't ever drink on the podcasts, and I've relinquished control. I'm sat here, I've got a glass of wine, I've got a dashing mustard jumper. I'm recovering from the mild shock of seeing Christina on a canoe with a cat. I'm as out of control as I could be.
I haven't seen this photo yet. Where is it?
It's on Instagram. It's part of my Happy Earth Day photo, and it seems appropriate. We are recording a Formula E podcast episode on Earth Day. So happy Earth Day to everybody. Go hug a tree, recycle, and inform yourself about what Formula E and the rest of the world is doing to be kind to our Earth.
Go Earth.
Go Earth.
One world, baby.
But for anybody who's wondering, the specific picture that Spanners is referencing can be found on my social media, which we will have linked in the show notes along with everybody else's. And you can see Squeaks McGee in all his glory in a canoe in a little life jacket. And now let's hop on in to our questions. First up, we have from Perry Brown via email. Can we get some insight into the attack charge system that should have debuted at Misano, delayed indefinitely, but is this something vital to the series? So much so it won't be killed off entirely? What were the targets to make this something the team opted for strategically? What are we thinking? So attack charge, something I was personally very much looking forward to. It sounded very, very fun, very exciting. Pit stops do add that little bit of chaos where things can go right, things can go wrong. You get traffic in the pit lane. And Formula E just doesn't have that because they have the one-purpose tires that last the entire race. And now attack charge, it's being delayed because the technology just isn't where it needs to be for safety above all else, I'm under the impression of.
Yeah, I think safety is definitely the paramount objective, really, isn't it? So yeah, Perry getting in touch on the email, which we discovered we had a couple of weeks ago, missedapexformulae@gmail.com.
I told them so many times they had an email.
You didn't. But also, somebody also got in touch on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter to also ask when this comes in, is the attack mode going to be changed? And I'm going to answer both those questions in one fell swoop here. Right. So Williams Advanced Engineering, or whatever the new name is since they rebranded it, are the ones supplying the infrastructure for this fast charging system. Right. So there is a chance that we'll see actually different formats of this being used, because even when it was first mooted to be introduced at the start of the Gen 3 era, which was January 2023, so we've had quite a few delays, given that we are now in April of 2024, and we definitely won't see it at least until the Gen 3 Evo era, which will be in 2025. But we could see a mix of, in double headers, for example, they'll do it only in one of those races. So they want to try different things, or maybe they'll only use it on, say, like a track like Misano, where we had the real extreme battery saving thing, right? So rather than having that, we'd have the 30-second charge. The idea is that you come into the pits, you get the fast charge hooked onto the back of the car like an old F1 pit stop where they would refuel, 30 seconds. Now, the idea of it is actually fairly limiting, though, in terms of what you can actually do, because so far the only sort of recharge and extra energy gain I've seen is stationary for 30 seconds, and they might even introduce a minimum stationary time, or actually, no, I should say minimum recharging time, because it would start when it gets plugged in, which would give you 10% of the battery, which is about 4 kilowatt hours. So
that's not bad.
In terms of like the amount of recharge time, yes, very impressive in 30 seconds, right? But also, it doesn't give you all that much in the way of strategic options if everyone has to do the same thing. Now, where the attack mode comes in all of this is that the pit stop would unlock the extra power. So the idea is you wouldn't do this whole offline thing anymore where you go through the 3 sensors to get the extra power. You would do your pit stop and then you have the extra power. But of course, what's been delaying all of this is just the technology isn't quite there yet. They were talking about introducing it at the start of this year, but there were tests that kind of went wrong during preseason testing in Valencia. Then there was a bit of an incident during the practice session where they were testing it again at the first round in Mexico City, where one of the units had to be isolated for investigation, and they were going to practice it at further pit stops. But now it's not going to happen this season. At best, it will happen at the start of next year.
Definitely disappointing. It's one of the things I was so looking forward to. I love attack mode. I think it's very fun. But overall, I just want more strategic options for Formula E. I feel like a lot of the times we just do get them kind of stuck in those places that they're stuck in. Fingers crossed, even if attack charge doesn't work, I'd love to just see us adding one other level, one other something or other to add a little bit of strategy.
I think they need to avoid the Formula One mistake of everybody not knowing what fuel loads people were on during the refueling period of Formula One, because it made the racing impossible to follow. And so in early seasons of Formula E, correct me if I'm wrong, we saw the battery percentages the whole time. So we could see that now, having come back into Formula E the last couple of seasons, I'm sure, Chris, you could see the percentages the whole time.
I don't think we got it 100% of the time. We definitely got it more often.
Maybe.
Back then. I think we only get it like 2 to 3 times a race now, whereas we maybe got it like 10 times back in the earlier days. But the thing, Spanners, on that, if they restrict it to only, one option, which is you charge for 30 seconds and you get this extra 10%, then that's not really going to be a problem.
No, but like at Misano, when people were doing all this clever energy saving, we couldn't tell who was doing well or who was doing better. So it made that element a little bit not of a spectacle.
But again, it's a catch-22 because the teams don't know either, and they only get that information when it comes up on the TV. So it's a balance of not letting the teams in too much on what the other people are doing versus keeping the fans and the viewers informed.
Yeah. So, but if they could create a version of the Formula One refueling where we could see the battery, but I know the tech isn't there yet, but imagine a Formula E where they came in and they charged for 10 seconds. That means that's given them another 10 laps. But if they choose 30 seconds, they lose track position, but then they don't have to come back and charge again. That would add the strategy that Christina wants.
I would love it if it wasn't so restricted. And we could see, you can maybe charge for 10 seconds, or you could charge for a full minute if you wanted to on like a longer circuit, and you don't go a lap down or something. But yeah, the problem at the moment in its current guise, it does seem like it's only one option, and you only get, it's this amount you're going to recharge. This is how long it's going to take. This is the amount of extra power you're going to get for it. As well. The only other slight niggle that the drivers have brought up as well, though, is that each team is only getting one unit at the moment, and you're not allowed to stack your cars in the pit lane. So let's say you have a scenario where there's a safety car and everybody wants to come in and do their recharge. Well, suddenly then you have to prioritize a driver, don't you? It's going to screw over half the field.
That was my next question, was how are they planning to do it with teams? Because the Formula E pit lanes are kind of small. And when you're dealing with electrical charging, I'm imagining there's so many safety features and processes that they have to have in place with it. But oh my goodness, yes, only being able to charge one car at a time when it takes 30 seconds to do the thing. And would that also limit repairs? Because sometimes cars just come in to get their nose changed. So would it be you can only have one car in the pits at a time, or just one car for charging?
Well, you can't stack them. So you couldn't do like what we see in Formula One. If you have a rush where one car waits behind the pit box for it to be cleared and then suddenly pulls in, you can't do that. So you could try and magically time it if your cars were 35 seconds apart, but you don't get any cars 35 seconds apart in Formula E races, do you? Because they all stack up against one another. So it will be a case of you can only bring one driver in on any certain lap, and then the other one will just have to carry around for another lap.
Wow. Well, much to work on when it comes to attack charge. Fingers crossed, it's a project they continue to work on, because it does seem like it has a lot of promise. A little bit of tweaking needed, but definitely a lot of promise. Now, our next question is from Bram via email. What is going on with track limits in Formula E? A common question I think a lot of us were asking ourselves last round, because they were going over the curbs a lot. And the follow-up to that is there a white line rule on the tracks? I'm assuming that there isn't, given how wide everyone was running. Now, Misano and Portland, those are the two big examples where the walls are not the limit, which means that in this situation, Formula E is just so irregular. Is it written in their rules that there's even a track limit thing, or is it just, nope, usually we have walls and that's the limits?
Yeah, generally there is no track limits, like on the street courses. I can barely think of one example where they've actually had to like impose a track limits rule, because it is just the barrier. And even when they use shortened versions of permanent facilities, like at Mexico, you do kind of just ignore the white lines that aren't a part of the track. So like Mexico Turn 1, for example, where the track limits is more the grass than the white line, because that's denoting like, the full Grand Prix straight, which Formula E doesn't use. But when you go to the bigger tracks that do have runoff, generally Formula E is taking a more of a relaxed approach. The issue in Misano was that the track limit rule was different depending on which corner you were looking at. So you would have noticed when they go through that cut through at 1, 2, 3, 4 and onto the back straight, they could kind of do whatever they wanted in terms of going all over the curbs. But then you get to the last corner and it's, you need to have two wheels on the curb. So I think that is what the main cause of confusion was for the viewer. And, it came up in commentary as well. And I think it's an understandable issue. It's something that Formula One took an awfully long time to get right.
Formula E is quite brave at experimenting with new things. If they are going to do more of these real circuits and not the street circuits, I wonder if they might be brave enough to do proper electronic solutions to track limits, because as an electronics engineer, I promise you the technology for detecting where a car is in relation to a certain boundary is relatively trivial. There is so many examples in the world of a machine that can tell where an object is compared to another thing. Radar, LiDAR. You can use TV images. You can. It's honestly, it's very solvable. I couldn't tell you the exact way to do it because you'd have to look at what resources and etc. you have available. But it is well possible. Other industries have it. It exists. So if you have that, could we not, Chris, get the iRacing system where if you go off track in a place where it's deemed to be a specific advantage, it simply gives you a delta you have to drive to, which is disadvantageous. So you get a slowdown effectively that it's up to you to take safely within 30 seconds. And in fact, iRacing has a great system where if you just leave the track at any time, you get a incident point. And then if you get 12, you get a drive through. So Formula E is brave enough to try that kind of tech solution.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the system that most series adopt, which is 3 strikes and you get a penalty kind of thing where, you know, okay, yeah, you get the first 2 for free, but after that, we're going to start dishing out 5-second penalties. I don't think there's an issue.
Well, you're not disagreeing with me, really. I'm just giving you 12 overall for, you know, including if you have a spin, the stewards can go, okay, +2 for being out of control. And if you hit someone, they could even go, right, any contact is 4, go. Just like iRacing. I love it.
Yeah, but then you don't get penalized for your first bit of contact unless you do it 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could be like, I've only had 4 incident points. And this does happen in iRacing as well, where you go, I've got 8 to spare.
Save up your incident points.
I can spend 4 to turn him around rear wheel contact.
No, so I don't think contact should be taken into account, but I do think, you know, a bit of grace in the track limits, and that is generally what happens in the races. In qualifying, it's a bit more hard and fast. Like if you go off, that lap won't count. I think the issue that Formula E had in Misano was that it wasn't the same at each corner, which is what caused confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Well, given how many graphics
this weekend as well.
Not just that, but we have so many overlay graphics nowadays. I would just love it for the broadcast, for the convenience of people at home, to have that graphic ready to go. They can overlay a whole bunch of different advertisers and countless series. Nowadays in Formula One, we also have this is which driver is in which car pop-ups that we started getting this weekend as well, a lot more liberally. Something like track limits and which corners they apply to would be a very practical application of some of those overlays.
Or we just stop applying different rules to different corners and just say white line, that's it. Like what Formula One has done for the last couple of years.
That too. We can also go for the more simple thing, but maybe I just like graphics. I think that's also part of it. I just like getting shown shiny pictures on broadcasts, and I will not apologize for it. Alrighty. Our next question is from Wes via Slack. What is the least infuriating way to find out where and when sessions are on and how I can watch them?
Right. So this is an issue I found with a lot of people, and it's one that I personally don't understand.
No,
but maybe
me too.
Maybe I'm just used
Chris,
to hunting for it a little bit more.
I've never known when Formula E is on. Not in 10 seasons. I found it impossible to know where to watch it when it's happening.
Right. The problem was that in the UK, we had TV deals that were inconsistent, right? And it was up to the broadcaster to decide whether they were actually going to bother to put it on live TV or whether they were just going to limit it to their on-demand services or the over-the-top services. And that's regardless of whether it's been on the BBC, on Channel 4. I think ITV were the only ones to actually put it on ITV, but even then you'd be like, is it on ITV1? Is it on ITV4? Is it on ITVX or whatever? Well, it didn't exist back then, but the good news is now it's very, very simple. All right. So I'll get to the UK specific one in a sec, but generally, Formula E website, there is a page, how to watch, look up your country, you'll find it. Generally, free practice will be on the Formula E YouTube channel, and then qualifying and the race will be your respective broadcast distributors, which in the UK is TNT Sport, and it will always be on TNT.
Mm-hmm. And for Canadians, it is on TSN Plus specifically. And thankfully for us Canadians, TSN is like the only sports broadcaster that we really have access to. For everywhere else in the world, though, you guys do have to look it up, unfortunately. But if you're looking for timings, this is where we recommend either go to the homepage of the Formula E website, and it'll typically have a link directly to the next race, and you can take a look at the timings in local time for the racetrack or your own time. And then the app as well also has that nifty little feature where you can just take a look at the schedule and see the timings.
You can download the calendar as well. So
That too.
Calendar or whatever calendar of choice you may have on your mobile device. Spanish, you look like you want to say something.
Kind of.
You're biting his tongue face.
It has really upset me because you're sort of downplaying it, but I think it's a good question because, like, especially in the early days, if you missed the race and go, right, I want to catch up with it, like, it would be random. I think they sometimes did a 2 minutes highlights package on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. In the past, it has been an issue, and I think it's been largely an issue with the broadcasters themselves not putting it on TV enough because they know that a rerun of relocation will get more views than a live Formula E race, which is a sad reality, but it is reality nonetheless, right? I think now we have a much more consistent, much more steady, much more understandable solution. And I do still have an issue though with the catch-up services. So as you know, I missed Sao Paulo because I was in Paul Ricard that weekend, and I went onto the Virgin Media on demand service to try and watch it. Not only did they cut out bits of the race, but it also just stopped 2/3 of the way through, and there was nothing. There was literally no way to watch the last 10 minutes of this race. After which I was relieved to find that actually the 1 week had passed and the full race was available on the Formula E website. Which, if you don't have TNT and you don't want to pay £30 a month just to watch Formula E. But then you do also get MotoGP as well, so maybe that makes it worth it for you. But if you don't want to do that, then 1 week after the race, they upload the race to the Formula E website.
Yeah, you couldn't make that E-Prix, could you? So that was Sao Paulo. That was a really good race review show. That was the best one of the season, probably, I'd say.
Really?
Yeah, Christina and Brad just knocked it out of the park. Brad knows so many things. But I'm upset about the TNT thing. Like, no disrespect to the service or whatever, but putting Formula E behind a paywall, it feels to me like they don't actually advertise Formula E. You know, there's no like guerrilla campaign online. You don't happen upon it. You don't get it thrust in your face every time you open Facebook or Twitter because they don't have to. I guess they've done the TV deal. That's where the money now comes from. And I feel like that is a milking the cow move rather than a growing the cow move, and the cow is still pretty small.
Right. So in Formula E's defense, they've tried BBC, they've tried ITV,
True.
They've tried Channel 4, they've tried Channel 5. What else is
YouTube?
That is every. Well, okay, yeah. No, I would absolutely adore them to just put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But then they're not making any money at all from broadcasters paying for the rights to distribute it, and Formula E will go out of business tomorrow.
It could be the growth. This could be the growth period for Formula E, though. And I know it's been 10 years along the line, and they've probably got shareholders that are getting impatient. But you still think, you look at the audience numbers, and you look at on the street, who knows who the Formula E champion is? No one.
Well, yeah. But then again, it's only in the last 5 years or so that the average street person knows that Formula One exists.
That's true.
So the fact that anyone knows that Formula E exists is a bit of a miracle.
Yeah, they need a Netflix thing, Charge to Survive. That's what
they do have. They have the series Unplugged. The only problem is it's self-produced and self-distributed.
Oh, I see.
Like a Netflix deal, but it is an incredibly good series that I would highly recommend.
Unplugged. Surely it's plug it in or charge it up. Unplugged is like, that's bad. You unplug something and it's got cordless. That would make more sense. Unplugged is turning something off.
Is your phone off when it's unplugged?
No, but I am with olden days, aren't I? In the olden days, yes.
In the olden days, when you pulled the antenna out of your phone. Yeah.
All right, I feel attacked now. I'm going to take my headphones off.
Well, yes, Formula E does have a couple of challenges when it comes to their broadcast, without a question. Would love to see it more centralized. But once you figure out where you can watch it personally, thankfully, it's not too complicated. So we will probably link it in the show notes. We will link it in the show notes, the Formula E Where to Watch page. And then you can go from there. Alrighty, moving on to another question. Let us see, from Josh Smith via Slack. Why do they not have slick tires? Rain, sure, but then you could just pit. So Formula E, they have a single all-weather type of tire. Partially, yes, because they're Formula E and they want to be environmentally conscious. And so it involves producing less tires if you only have one compound, and it's also less transportation. So the big motivator behind it is that we're trying to be environmentally conscious. And one way you can do that is through one type of tire compound.
Well, Formula E does things for one of two reasons. One is to be road relevant, and the other is to improve the show. And a road-esque tire does both of those things because it reduces the amount of grip that they have. So therefore, we get longer braking distances, and it increases the raceability of the cars. I think we're generally agreed: less grip, better raceability. But it's not just for the car manufacturers, it's for the tire manufacturers as well. So when Michelin was the sole supplier in the early days up until last year, they were introducing different generations of tire that had better rolling resistance all the time, and better life, and designing things for the purpose of just for EVs, to help improve the range. And rolling resistance is the primary aspect of that, but also how can we make tires more eco-friendly? How can we use materials that are less wasteful, less harmful to the environment, and improve production in that same capacity as well? So the road relevance is a key aspect of it. Now it's funny we're sitting here saying that when for Gen 4 they're talking about introducing a racing semi-slick tire and then also having rain tires available as a separate option, but currently that is why we have that situation with the tires.
And that is that. Alrighty.
Cool one, easy one.
Oh, easy one.
Next one.
We don't always go on raging tangents with every single question.
Was I supposed to disagree? No, the future of Formula E is doomed without slick tires. What a joke! What kind of Mickey Mouse outfit is this? They should have slick tires. But if they did have slick tires, does it affect the racing? Because you'd probably need more power to make slick tires effective. No, less the other way.
Formula cars have got plenty of power.
Yeah.
Especially
just not for long.
When they'll have 600 kilowatts power in Gen 4 as well, that will be more than enough. It literally, the slick tires, you would see lap times reduced by 8 seconds, right? But you would get much shorter braking distances as a result of that. And like one of the things they were talking about in Formula 1 was changing brake disc materials so that they were far worse, so that it would help increase the
braking zone.
That was at one point.
Well, those are all options for sure. Tires, grooves or not. What a question. Moving on to another one. This is Phil from Slack. What are their thoughts on Formula E moving towards real racetracks and away from street tracks? And see, this one's the one I'm excited about.
Now we get to yell at each other.
Oh my goodness. Okay. First of all, I'm going to get it out of the way right now.
Oh God.
I still want them to try to come back to Vancouver. Perfect street track right here. Just saying. And the big thing is, anytime you can walk to the track, it is a huge convenience. Anytime you can take public transport to the track, it is a huge convenience. And when you have a series like Formula E with their big tagline of we want to be environmentally conscious, you have to have tracks that are easily accessible by public transport. You should be going to cities that have that infrastructure that support it and that, live with that mentality, which is something that Vancouver does. Portland, I would say, is one of the only exceptions to a permanent track because they do actually have public transport that has a station at that race track. But one of the biggest outcries we heard was when we started hearing that the London E-Prix might be moved out of the city to somewhere a lot more. I have no clue where in the UK they were saying of moving it. I don't.
Silverstone,
yeah.
Silverstone.
A shorter layout, I assume, like the national circuit, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. It depends how good Gen 3.5 actually turns out to be. No, it probably would be like the Stowe circuit or something.
Okay.
But,
No. The Stowe circuit's way too small. The Stowe circuit's like a mile.
no. The national one where they go through Cops and then cut
Yeah.
through Maggots into the straight is the super, like the touring car layout. That's super. I think the Stowe layout might be a nice.
Oh, right.
Intermediate.
There's an internal circuit that they do the consumer experience on, so you can do the single seater experience in the circuit.
No, not that.
That is called the Stowe circuit. So that's that where they drive the Formula Silverstones. But there is a valid point to that. But an original London E-Prix was Battersea, and that's was through the Battersea Park. It took forever to get there. There was no great links. It was a nightmare to get to Battersea.
Spanners.
What?
The train station is like right next to the park.
It took forever to get there. Silverstone
what is wrong with you?
Silverstone will be easy because no one will go. So there's that.
Yeah. Okay. So Silverstone is in the back end of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right. It's a village in the north of England.
Towchester. Toaster. It's spelled Towchester.
Towchester. Yeah, exactly. As the Americans call it. But the actually that's what I first called it as well, just for a laugh. But I think the street circuits are great because Formula E's DNA is developing EVs. The whole point they wanted it on the city streets was because this is where the EV is going to be used, and we want to demonstrate EV technology directly to the consumer who live in the cities, right? Is not just the case of making it easy for the fans to get to the events, which Formula One has adopted massively as well, because every new track they come out with now is a city center race, because they know they want to take the racing to the people, right? And they are disregarding the quality of the tracks and the quality of the races as a result of it as well. And yes, acknowledged that city circuits come with extreme limitations because of the existing infrastructure, not to mention the headaches you cause by shutting down half a city for 2 weeks of construction and maybe a week of deconstruction as well. So there is a lot of headaches, and that's why I kind of liked the idea of, and there was the plan for them to go forward to use existing event spaces like the XL, like the Olympic Stadium in Seoul in South Korea as well, to do these things where, there might still be some limitations, but maybe less than racing directly on the streets. And a lot of these places still have great transport links as well. I mean, the XL is a prime example. You get off the DLR and you're literally at the back door of the XL, right? Or the front door, because there's two of them. So I can see why they want to do more permanent tracks. I see the appeal in it, because I'm sure it will improve the racing, and it will also make it, in an odd way, more accessible to racing fans. But I think I think they have to proceed with caution, because what they definitely don't want to do is look like every other racing series as well.
Chris is, you know what I'm going to say?
What's that?
Street circuits are garbage. They're garbage, and they're for garbage people doing garbage things.
They're garbage in Formula One, definitely, but there have been great races in city circuits in Formula E because the cars are designed for them.
I mean, they've been relatively, because the cars are designed for them is a great point. But go indoor karting, go and take part in an indoor series, try and do that racing there, then go and race at, a AAA circuit like Milton Keynes Daytona, where there's curbing and runoff. The racing is far, far, far better. And as much as, say, Paul Ricard is universally slammed, you can see drivers are willing to make a move, because you're not going to immediately just go into a wall. If you had Monaco without the walls, with the Hungarian Grand Prix, they go, oh, that's Monaco without the walls. That's like saying it's a birthday party without the clown stabbing everybody. Yeah, the walls are the clown turning around and stabbing everyone. The walls are what make it rubbish. They're what discourage you from making an overtake. They're what limit the space of the cars. Street circuits are trash.
But I'm just gonna remind you, Spanners, one of the best Formula E races ever to happen was Monaco, because the cars are well designed for racing. And I think this is very, very key. And I think it opens up a lot more opportunities in terms of what we can do with the track designs. Don't get me wrong, they have had some misses in terms of the track designs, but I do think that we can't have like a complete change of ethos when it comes to the circuits, because it is part of the DNA, and I think the drivers like them as well. It's part of the appeal of Formula E, and you get some interesting layouts, and I do genuinely think it makes the races better, because so far the races we've seen on the full length circuits, we've all collectively agreed on this podcast, we don't enjoy the style of racing that comes along with them.
Not just that, but I mean, other fans, not just people who have a microphone on this podcast, also kind of agree with that sentiment. They haven't been loving going out to the boonies to go to these major racetracks. Also, anytime you look at fan attendance, when you go to the permanent tracks and it is so empty for the most part, like Misano, there was one grandstand that was primarily filled. Having fans in attendance, having a lot of trackside energy is a huge thing. It can add just so much ambiance and energy to a broadcast. And it feels like when you go to the major tracks, if you can't fill the stands of it, it's going to feel weird.
I will just say beware the optics.
Mm-hmm.
Beware the optics, because obviously racetracks have an awful lot of grandstands. They are designed to pack in 100,000 people into them. So this is why, as an example, MotoGP stopped going to Indianapolis, because that place is supposed to hold 250,000 people, when they only got 60,000 through the doors for the MotoGP, which is still a lot of people. And, you know, it's more than a lot of Formula One races as well. And the average for like a good day for MotoGP is 80 to 100,000. But it looked terrible. And I think it's the same in Formula E. When you know you're not getting as many people, you you bring as many grandstands as you'll need onto those shorter circuits, and they look a lot more packed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, optics can definitely be managed, but it's I don't know, it's just one of those things that I keep going back to what it was like watching races during COVID and how empty it was.
Yeah,
And
like the football with the fake noises as well. Oh
my goodness, yes. I love the energy that we get from a Formula E race when it's in the middle of a city. I just think that's incredibly cool.
London was prime example. 20,000 people packed into the indoor section.
Exactly.
Real party atmosphere going on in there. There was the music performances. We need more of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Portland this year are doing something interesting where they're having the VIP grandstand off at a turn that's like a 5-10 minute walk away from all of the activations and everything, which either is a good thing, meaning they need to use more of the grandstands because they're selling more tickets that are around the main area, or they're doing a big activation for the people with the VIP passes. I'm not quite sure, but I'm very curious to see how that goes when I'm in Portland for that doubleheader towards the end of the Formula E series.
Can I just say, since I left my full-time job in PR, I thought I was done with the word activation, which is this fantastic PR word that has no meaning whatsoever and no substance.
But we had Tim Sylvie on the Missed Apex F1 show, and he was talking.
How did he say it?
Like 7 or 8 times. And then once Matt learned it, he also said it another 10 times. So it sounded like he knew what he was talking about. But it was really fascinating to hear, you know, how that sponsorship money converts itself. You know, so if you sponsor a driver, that driver then has like 3 activations for the media center or the paddock club or whatever. It was fascinating. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing with activations for Formula E is that it seems like in other series, here's the tangent. Here we're going on the tangent. But
Do it.
with Formula E, it never really feels like they have distinct activations at a lot of their races, whereas other series do. But from most photo opportunities that I see from race to race, I don't know what their fan zones pretty much all have the exact same activities, and there aren't really any brands that show up to do something different, which is why it's interesting to call it an activation, in my opinion, for Formula E, because it doesn't always feel like something new is being introduced, which seems to be the point of an activation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember a couple from London E-Prix, but they did have like a title sponsor as well, and they had like, I think, one specific thing there for the title sponsor in the fan zone. I know that Nissan tends to be quite active in there, like bringing their EVs to it. The problem is, I think most people aren't really interested in finding out about this sustainable oil that somebody has discovered, or trying to be sold an EV that they probably can't afford. And I'm not saying that Formula E fans can't afford an EV. I'm just saying EVs are expensive, and you don't go to a race event looking to buy a brand spanking new car.
You never know. You never know where someone's going to buy their new car from. Alrighty, let's move over to what will probably be our last question of this mailbag from Brett Cook via Slack. Top 3 requests, wish list items for Formula E to do over the next 1 to 5 years that would improve the series.
I know what Spanners is going to be.
No, no, you don't. I'm not predictable. Shut up. You're predictable.
I've got you down to.
Go on then. Why don't you guess mine and I'll tell you?
Is it going to be battery swappage?
No, I have said that they've ignored me and they're wrong. But yes, battery swappage. Basically, battery swappage does the same thing as your fast charge. It just does it in a way that is, possible.
Yeah. To be honest, there's not really an argument against the, to say that the fast charge is possible, given that they've tried for 18 months.
Yeah. If they were going to do the swappable batteries, they needed to have been working on that over the last 8 or 9 years. It's too late now. They're all in on this method. It's just that it's not ready, so it's far away.
I saw a solar-powered EV at Goodwood some years ago, and they were telling me this thing's gonna do a lap of the world, right? The way we're gonna do it is that the underside, the whole underside of the car was basically a pull-out battery. It was giant. It was massive. It's the size of my desk. But the idea was they could just yank it out, pop the new one in, and it would carry on its journey. So, there is something.
Yeah, everyone now needs to know how big your desk is, because you could have a particularly small desk, in which case that would be unimpressive.
To be honest, hang on a minute, I've got to take measure.
Or you could have a desk that's so grotesquely large that it's now a very impressive thing.
We could all measure our desks.
We could.
56 inches across.
That's exactly the same as my
Why
desk.
are you using inches?
Oh,
that is the side of the tape measure. Oh, God.
Because in the UK...
What you've done, Spanners. Do you see what you've done?
In the UK, we're worse than Americans for units of measure. So we are broadly the metric system, but we use miles per hour. I genuinely don't know my height or weight in metric. But yeah, so we're sort of this weird mix, yeah.
I know I know my weight because my scales are in kilos, but if you told me that you were 170 centimeters tall, I wouldn't know what that means. It's like, well, no, tell me that in feet and inches.
And my nearest shop I know is 2 furlongs away. So that's...
Oh, get out.
I'm just a bit older than you, that's all. Yeah. But okay, when you're leaving the motorway in the UK, right, you get furlong markers, the same as in horse racing. So it's 3 furlongs to the exit. Yes, you do. 3 stripes. No, on the motorway you get 3 stripes, then 2 stripes, then 1 stripe. That's furlongs.
Wow.
There you go. To the exit.
Okay.
It's going to be culture shock heading over there for the first time. Oh, my word.
Oh, God, yeah, definitely. Anyway, that was the side of the tape measure that was facing up.
Okay. So
that's why I gave it to you in inches.
So you're right. That would be on my wish list. I think.
Oh yeah, we had a question. Didn't we?
Formula E, be braver with just like what Formula E does, like pushing the boundaries and going, oh, okay, we don't really care if it's pure or whatever. We are embracing the show, and they've always embraced the show. So do it more. Like just do crazy stuff. Introduce proximity team radio. So if you're close enough to another car, you can press a button and talk to that driver. But only if you're within 2 cars of it or within 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen those blow up bubbles you can put people inside of?
Zorbs?
Yeah, or Zorb-like things, I suppose. Just telling their social media team, I think it'd be absolutely hilarious to toss a whole bunch of the different Formula E drivers in it and film videos of them just running into each other, trying to play soccer and whatnot, because they're already kind of an Agent of Chaos series.
Oh my God.
I say let their social media be even more chaotic because they do lean into it a fair bit, but they could push the boundaries with some goofy, silly things like that.
You need to be careful because Formula One went the wrong way with that a couple of years ago. And the culmination, the peak of getting drivers to do crazy things was Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris driving, I think, a Mercedes car around Silverstone, but they had
milk?
Hang on. Sorry,
milk.
You think they were driving a Mercedes? The McLaren drivers were driving a Mercedes.
Yeah, because they had a Mercedes engine.
Driving some sort of McLaren around.
I mean, I thought
Is that really the point you want to discuss right now?
I thought that as I was saying it, but I was like, no one's going to pick me up on that. No one's going to sit there and pick that apart. But yeah, they had to spill as little milk as possible, and the milk was going everywhere. And it's because Lando Norris had made some joke about milk. And all these middle-aged presenters were desperately like, we're funny like Norris as well. So you want to be careful to go down that route. And then you had the thing with Ricardo and Norris where they were hitting each other with space hoppers on the grid, which is kind of funny. But those things are like lightning in a bottle. When they're so forced, it is horrible. Some of the things that PR, this is your fault, Chris. This is you and your PR gang. What if we make them play Jenga on a bus and when a block falls out, children die?
And they do it during an earthquake.
Yeah. Wait, in a solar eclipse.
It's safe to say the biggest issue I had with what you just said was that the McLaren drivers were driving a Mercedes.
Yeah, I know. Everyone heard. I got it wrong.
I'm just to go back to the question.
This isn't about the questions, Chris. It's about yelling.
About the questions. I would quite like to see them introduce a IMSA/WEC style of rule where the manufacturers can design their own bodywork that links to their brand identity, and therefore you can sort of point to it and go because when you watch the WEC or the IMSA or something, you go, oh yeah, that's a Peugeot. I can tell by looking at it. That's the Alpine. That's the Cadillac, right? I would quite like in a way that where they are incredibly restricted on producing downforce because that's where every team would go for it, and then the spending would just go through the roof. And the whole point of Formula E is that it's nice and cheap and cheerful for manufacturers. But it would be nice to have a bit more brand identity in Formula E. And I think the manufacturers would enjoy such a thing as well.
That does seem like fun. Going off of the similar vein of what other series have done, typically at those weekends, they have more than one series on track. And as somebody who's gone and had to sit and wait in between sessions, I know they try and I know they put an effort to make it happen. It is something that does need to happen, though, and that I hope they continue to put effort in, is just find a way to have other support series at the track, because it's asking a lot of people to be there for a full day and to only see less than, 2 hours of cars on track between all the sessions.
40-minute race, quali takes 10 years, doesn't it? And it's a 30-minute practice. So yeah, it's not a lot of on-track time. That's why they put so much effort into the fan zone and stuff to keep people entertained. But obviously we were supposed to have the Next Gen Cup, weren't we? The mini series, the mini EV series starting in Misano. And then the hilarious thing was I accidentally came across their TikTok account, which was actively posting, even though they hadn't even started yet, which I couldn't quite believe. But yeah, no, we need a support series, preferably one that is not like the Jaguar I-Pace E-Trophy, where it was probably the worst thing to listen to because it was all tire squeal and brake screeching the whole way through. And it was the most awful brake screeching I've ever heard.
Didn't you commentate on e-scooter racing once?
I didn't commentate on it. You're thinking of Harry Benjamin, as many people often do, because he is a taller, much more handsome, and
much more successful, much more successful, and younger as well. Yeah.
No, he's like 8 months older.
Oh,
than
is
me.
he? Okay.
Yeah,
but
that's the only saving grace.
But better looking, taller, more successful. Check.
Definitely all those things.
Right,
I've told him about. I've said to him. I said last time I saw him, do you know how hard it is being friends with you? Because he's so goddamn tall, handsome, and successful. Anyway, enough about.
Yeah, you said handsome too many times. It's suspicious now.
It's just true. Anyway, but I was involved in that e-scooter championship in other ways, in the other guises of my career. But that's not really hit the ground running.
No, and it's not going to be a good support series. But I think you're right, Christina. One of the reasons Silverstone is such a great event is you've got so much going on there. And it's been a shame to see Formula 2 and Formula 3 split throughout the calendar. So you used to turn up for Silverstone and you'd have Friday, Saturday, you'd have loads of on-track action with F2, F3, Porsche Super Cup. And there are now some Grand Prix where there's literally nothing. So at Miami, that we're going to next weekend, thankfully there's a little bit of a fuller. You've got F1 Academy doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. And I think there's Porsche Super Cup as well. But
it'll be the Carrera Cup North America.
Oh, well, that's better. It's better. Is that a lower standard of racing, would you say?
The Super Cup is considered like the sort of global Porsche series. Yeah. It's the same car, but then you have regional series.
Oh, no,
as
great.
Well.
So
there's one in almost every country in Europe, but you also have like a Benelux and a Scandinavia one. You have North America. You have an Australian series. You have an Asian series. So, you would get Carrera Cup Asia, for example, at like the Chinese Grand Prix or the Singapore Grand Prix, that kind of thing. So it is a little bit regional in the same way you get it with the single seaters as well. Like they had F4 USA at COTA a few years ago. The issue with the F1 and F2, the F2 and the F3 is that they tend to be a European championship to try and keep the cost. I know they've expanded it to Australia and other places in recent years, but to great cost. And so, that's why when you go to non-European races, it tends to be slightly different style of support package.
Okay, I've got it. The perfect support package is broadly similar cars or the previous generation of whatever car you're watching with much worse drivers. So you could have Formula E Gen 2 cars, but with just fully pay drivers, dentists, just absolute bandits.
Spanners, I am about to blow your mind hole. Okay?
I know that some people bought the Gen 2s.
Yeah, because Dilbag Gill and Nick Heidfeld bought a bunch of the Gen 2 cars and they're launching Formula G.
Yeah.
And it's going to be split so that it will be two drivers sharing a car in two sort of separate class of races.
Yeah.
Where you have a pro, which runs the high power mode, and an AM.
Like drive. Aston Martin F1. Brilliant. Yeah. So, but why not have that as the support series for the Formula E races? That sounds great.
Do you know what? I think it would be a great idea, but I think they are keen to run it as its own thing. But I would love to see it as... Yeah. Well, actually, do you know what the concern would be? That it's quicker than Formula E. Because because Gen 3 wasn't the huge leap in performance that we all thought it was going to be. But then the 3.5 should actually be quite a significant step forward. They're bringing new Hankook tires, which will actually have grip on them. We'll have front-activated powertrain, so should be quicker.
Oh. Well, we all agree. Another track. Oh, not another track. Another racing series.
Yeah.
My goodness. My mind was jumping ahead to the other point that I'm going to make for the second time.
Okay.
And
Say
that's to just places where we could be racing. Vancouver, totally for unselfish reasons. But I just think in general that there's so many other places that I would love to see Formula E race. And that's true of any racing series. I'm always just going to say, let's go to other places. Let's try something new. Let's do something incredibly cool. And I think Vancouver's a great place for that. But where else? Where else would we love to see
Here's the thing, though,
race
is
happening?
you travel, Christina, and that's why that's exciting for you, because it's an opportunity for you to go to a new place. I remain indoors like most sensible people. The outside is
Remember
scary.
that podcast we did?
Yeah, we had a whole podcast called Remain Indoors. But yeah, so when you go somewhere else, though, when it's on telly, I mean, they do look broadly the same on telly. That's the problem.
That is true. Do you remember like the Las Vegas Grand Prix? And you had no idea it was in Las Vegas until they pulled to a heli shot.
Well, they had to. When they were going above the sphere thing, they had to change the shot so the Formula One car was just a little speck at the bottom, and then the sphere was most of the camera angle. That was to go, see, we are in Vegas.
To be fair, I was in Vegas and I knew we were in Vegas and I had a great time.
Yeah, and
in
I
Vegas.
was at home indoors.
If you would like Chris and Spanners to have a great opinion of Vegas and me to have an even better opinion of Vegas, we have free time in November. That
I might go
I'm
to
assuming
Vegas.
we all have free time.
I might be.
assuming.
I may be in Vegas for F1.
We'll see. Exciting things are. See, Chris, you're the only one who's not coming to the States for a race. Peer pressure. Everybody peer pressure Chris Stevens.
I think this is how you peer pressure.
We don't know. If anybody wants to pay for me to come to an event in the States and do some work for you, then go right ahead. But I would like to see a return to Long Beach and on the full circuit, not the shortened version that they ran for the first 2 years of Formula E. And I think there could be a little bit more correlation between the types of circuits that are run in IndyCar.
Yeah,
example,
like Bella Park, that kind of thing.
Oh, that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, is it gone? No.
Yeah, they got rid of it.
Oh.
It only exists in iRacing now. They got a new one, the Detroit track, and they're going to run IMSA on it this year as well. I can't wait for that because that track is it's a death trap. It is the bumpiest thing I've ever. It's the worst racing surface I've ever seen.
Like cars went flying last year. They had to have the double pit lane, which was surprisingly they handled it fine.
Before, though, so.
Man, IndyCar pit lanes stress me out a little bit more, unsurprisingly, than Formula E, where they don't go in during the race to refuel.
Yeah.
But yes, Detroit is the Detroit track layout. So bumpy, so chaotic. Man.
But it was brilliant.
Yes.
Exactly what you needed from an IndyCar race. It was
the prime type of chaos. Yes.
Pandemonium. But the idea of having like GTP cars running on there, like no way.
Oh my gosh. Like even the Indy cars were kind of going flying up off some of these bumps. Whoop.
Question.
Yes, Spanners.
Formula E, right? It's almost a verb, Formula E doing Formula E things. Just the chaos. Should Formula E just embrace that and do the chaos? I mean, recently I suggested that because of the Formula One dominance, they should just embrace competition cautions, embrace the entertainment side. Should Formula E just really, really lean in?
No, I think you can push for competitiveness and for competition by doing things that they do, like severely limiting what the teams can do and restricting the power and restricting budgets and all these types of things and creating an inherently close formula. When you start going to sort of competition caution side of doodah, and also like the rule where when it was timed races and they had safety cars, they would calculate how much percentage of the battery they should take away from everyone so that we didn't just have a flat out race to the end. And that resulted in Valencia in only 3 cars finishing the race. And it's safe to say that although it was pure chaos and pandemonium and competition NASCAR style of event, nobody was happy about it. It needs to retain a level of sporting prowess to not only retain World Championship status, but also to keep attracting the biggest manufacturers and the best drivers. Because if it is a lottery as to who will win, nobody is going to want to give it a shot. That's why they changed the qualifying format a few years ago, because it was genuinely random.
Can I be harsh?
Go on.
They're already struggling to get people to give it a shot.
What do you mean they're already struggling? Have you seen the caliber of driver?
No. Oh, I meant viewers.
Oh, viewers?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's for other reasons, though, isn't it?
They're losing the battle of eyeballs.
But I don't think you can say the quality of the racing is the reason that people are not watching it.
No, but you can be a bit of a novelty act. That would be the other way to go.
People don't watch it because they have some sort of grudge against EVs purely because they don't make a thunderous V8 noise.
Which is wrong. You go and watch Formula E in person. It is spectacular to hear a herd of Formula E cars because you are hearing suspension, you're hearing tires. And when they crash in front of you, it is sickening. Because it's not...
The sound of last year from Portland. Does anybody else remember the car that had its front wing fully stuck underneath, just dragging? You could hear that coming all the way down the main straight, just like scratching against the top of the asphalt. It was the most disgusting noise I've ever heard, but we all had fun hating it together. It was great.
When I worked with one of the teams and I was at the London E-Prix, and obviously this is in the indoor section, so it echoed around the arena as well. But I remember Lotterer stuck, I think it was DaCosta, stuck him in the wall. And because we were watching it on the monitors and there's like a maybe 5-second delay between it happening in real life. And so I was watching the monitors and all of a sudden I hear what sounds like a gun being fired. And I look up and it was like a little cartoon behind the barrier, just bits of debris going boop, up and around and spitting out.
Because you can hear all the various stages of crumple as things are crashing into each other.
Oh,
so
genuinely, it scared me.
Yeah.
But I think just in general, when they're just going around, they sound like stealth jet fighters.
Yeah, I think they sound pretty cool. It's become almost like a badge of honor to go, no, I need to have my eardrums burst by cylinders popping up and down. You don't. You don't need that.
But I need to like genuinely do a deep dive one day of the viewing figures of Formula E, and not the ones they put in press releases. I mean the genuine ones, and compare that to other non-Formula One events.
Sure.
And racing series, because I genuinely think that Formula One fans get skewed because of like just what Formula One is. And their perceptions of motorsport are skewed by what Formula One is, because the truth is 90% of motorsport is not like Formula One.
Very, very true. And unlike Formula One, Formula E is, I don't know where I was going with that.
Fun.
But we are signing off.
Great outro, Macy.
I know. I knew I was going to side out, and I thought I was going to say something clever. But instead, I'm just going to say thank you for sending in all of your questions. There was also a request for some pet photos, which some people also did send in. So I got some replies on Twitter as well of just very adorable, fluffy creatures. So thank you for that. If you have a chance to go see a Formula E race in person, we do highly recommend it. We've all had a great time there. It's phenomenal. And we will be back with a race review after this weekend in Monaco. And remember, just because we're not always doing mailbag episodes, you can always send us in questions. That email will be linked in the show notes, as well as our social media handles and information for where to watch, because it was requested this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next episode.